She was sure she'd made the right decision to abandon Mason at the altar, but sharp guilt that she'd also left her parents at the wedding stabbed at her. She knew her parents would understand her not marrying Mason in the end, but they would not approve of her fleeing the scene. She had worked so hard at Columbia University. A journalism graduate, she'd found her camera was her favorite way to observe the world, to tell a story. All that work, the elation she'd experienced when she crafted the perfect photo essay or framed the perfect shot, revealing someone's soul in a single image, had been so fulfilling. Yet she'd driven away from all of that and more. And standing there, April knew the deep regret of failure was dwarfed by what she'd seen in the photos from Woodstock, what she'd learned about life since Andrew died. The hollow tone of wood thudding against wood made April head down the dock. The rowboat that had been carved 60 years before, shaped from one of the biggest cypress trees on the property, bobbed at the end of the dock. What would it be doing out of storage this late in the year? She looked around as though there'd be someone there to answer her thoughts. A stiff wind dropped in and forced the waves to stand in sharp rows like soldiers marching toward the dock, bullying the boat. The gusts pressed April's dress to her thighs, making it hard to walk. She raised her hand, the veil flapping in the wind. She opened her hand, and the veil swirled around her fingertips and then soared away. At the end of the dock, she tried to squat, but the dress was too tight. Damn it. The dock creaked beneath her. She reached behind her and worked the buttons. It had been the one concession she'd made to her future mother-in-law. She'd had exquisite antique buttons sewn onto her otherwise decoration-free dress. She'd never imagined she'd be trying to wiggle out of the sheath on her own. The woodpeckers and crickets performed as April reached up, then down her back to get at the last of the buttons. A wave tossed the rowboat upward, smacking it against the dock again. She took a deep breath and pulled at the dress, scattering buttons around her feet. A fresh wind broke over the mooring and blew the buttons in every direction, dropping them into the water below. Another crash of the rowboat, and April refocused. She shimmied out of the dress, then bent over and yanked the rope that tethered the boat. The wind dropped away, bringing an eerie stillness that draped the water like a blanket. The boards creaked again. She froze. Her right foot pushed through the wharf. The dock couldn't be breaking. Her father would never let that happen. She pulled her foot out of the cavity and resumed pulling the rope. The creaking wood escalated into a whine, then a groan, and before she could react, the end of the dock collapsed, dropping April into the water. It stung her skin. Its coldness made her feel as though her lungs were solid, unable to allow air in or out. She kicked hard, pulling toward the top, telling herself to be calm. A little chilly water wouldn't hurt. As her head broke the surface, the stiff waves pushed her up, throwing her nearly out of the water. She could see the boat was still roped to the piling. It was safer than she. The sprays fell away as fast as they rose, and she plunged underwater, brushing by a submerged tree stump. The punch of the severed cypress on her ribs almost forced her to inhale underwater. She willed herself to ignore the pain and swim for the top again. She broke the surface and gasped as she stroked, head out of the water, toward the remaining part of the dock. A figure on the dock startled her. For a second, she thought she was hallucinating. A man was there, kicking off his shoes and pulling his shirt over his head. She waved and yelled before going under again. She struggled to stay above the rough water and fell back under as she felt hands around her.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.